Yes, yes. The prodigal sons have returned. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil. I know you're excited. I know you're excited. You're as excited as I am to see us. I'm all a titter, Mike Manley. Is that how I use that word? I think so. Agog. Guys, when you see three smiling angelic countenances on your video scope, that means a couple things. I love it. That's the thumbnail. One, it must be Wednesday, 8 p.m. EST somewhere in the world. Two, you're about to be blessed by the the gift of gab by count of three expert cartoonists, and also three, it must be pinch me, I must be dreaming time. Let's do some introductions, guys. I'm your first host. My name is Jamar Nicholas. Besides this very nice hat, I wear other hats. I am the second vice president of the National Cartoonist Society. That's got to count for something. I am also the chapter chair of the Philadelphia chapter. We won't say go Birds, that's done, but we'll get them next year.
Gone Birds.
I am also the creator and graphic novelist behind Leon Extraordinary, my series at Scholastic underneath the graphics imprint. I just got the files back today, you guys. The cover reveal is coming for Leon and the Big Problem in stores November 2026. I'm not going to do that tonight. We have bigger fish to fry, but it's right there on the epidermis. It's right underneath the skin. So, guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce my cohort, co-conquistador, and co-conspirator. He is known in these webcomic streets as the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. By God, it must be Stone Cold Steve Conley. Hello, Steve Conley.
Gentlemen, it is so good to see you.
Yes.
I've missed your faces. Hello, my name is Steve Conley. I write and draw your 23rd favorite webcomic, The Middle Age. You can read it at middleagecomic.com. It's on your Webtoons, on your Tapas, on your Go Comics. And I also make TTRPG stuff. So if you play the Dungeons and the Dragons, you can check out the latest called Stabra Cadabra. I've got another one coming out for Zine Quest, which is the big zine event for February. I'll tell you all about that in the coming weeks. But I would be remiss if I'd introduce the Tower of Power, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour, Darkhawk's daddy. He draws 2 daily comic strips, and that's all after drawing your childhood. He's Mr. Mike Manley.
Hello, everyone.
Whoa, hello. Oh, I see.
My chest is your childhood.
I see that. Sure. Hold on. I got to move the stuff. Let's see it.
My chest is your childhood. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I found this weird, random Darkhawk T-shirt on eBay. No, not eBay. I mean Amazon.
Wow.
I just typed in Darkhawk T-shirt and I found this. And then I also found Marvel licensed out a bunch of images, well, like the first cover of Darkhawk #1, which they made T-shirts of, which they didn't pay me for.
Of course not.
So I had to buy my own T-shirt. And the funny thing is, I had this T-shirt on when I went to the hospital last year. And when they took me in, they're wheeling me, and the guard comes up and goes, he saw my name, he saw this image, he goes, I know you. You're that guy that drew my childhood.
You're like, guilty.
And then he kirked me. He kirked me on the back of the neck.
I love it.
But it's funny because you never think about, I've talked about this before, you're out in the wild, you're doing your thing, and all of a sudden you meet somebody who's a comic book fan, and this guy happened to be a security guard at Lackinaw Hospital. So
well, is that one of those things where I know there's an incredible disconnect, especially maybe even for your generation, Mike, because this is super pre-internet, where it's just like you didn't see anybody or interact with a lot of people unless it was at a show, maybe like a ballroom, go through the back issues show, and not like somebody's following you on Instagram.
Oh, they hadn't even know until that, really, till the internet.
Right.
Who knew what you looked like?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we only knew what people looked like because you'd look inside the Marvel bullpen page and there'd be a picture of somebody, right? We knew what Stan looked like.
Right.
And we kind of knew what Kirby looked like, and maybe like Neil Adams but there's a lot of people you had no idea what they looked like, right? Unless they were interviewed in the, like the Comics Journal or something. You had no idea what Sal Buscema looked like. There's a lot of people like that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that drew a lot of comics you might have been a fan of, but you might not have any idea what that person looked like. There was no internet, right? So depending upon how deep you were into fandom, you might have known. Like, I didn't know what Mike Royer looked like. I knew what Joe Sinnott looked like, right? But yeah, it was really, you could go around pretty much and not have any. You could be a person in the show, and people wouldn't know who you were.
And I will go ahead.
It was funny when I was younger. People used to always think I was George Perez because he and I, two swarthy guys with dark hair, and we sort of did look like we could have been brothers. A lot of people would come up thinking that I was George Perez.
Yeah. Especially with the comic artist Moo. Like, everybody had a really like loud print shirt, right?
Yeah. The uniform.
The uniform. We just had a great comment in the chat a second ago. It's just like, you think about Wizard Magazine and kind of like that early kind of foray into comic book, I don't know, sensationalism. Can I call it that? It's like, here's the top 10 artists on Wizard Mag. Like, we didn't think about any of this stuff that way, and they're putting big pictures next to your artwork. So that might have been one of the beginnings of.
Well, there was no monthly popularity contest. It was nothing like that. I mean, people were fans of characters first, and then usually fans of artists because of those characters, right? I mean, I think the original superstar was probably Kirby because of Stan, and Stan was, the big the big star because he was promoting himself above all. But yeah, well into the 80s, I think you could probably go to a show and people might not know who you were, right? Wizard sort of started that, the artist being a personality, and like none of the old guys were personalities. Stan was the personality, but Kirby wasn't a personality, or Ditko or anybody. And even Neil Adams was not a personality in the way that that all came because of like MTV and that shit like that. Yeah, so it's just weird because that is like not ever in my head, so if I go somewhere and that's not a comic book convention, and then you have people recognize your name, and I had that several times when I would go to the hospital or something like that. They would be like, "Oh, that name." Well, because Mike Manley is the prime minister, old prime minister of Jamaica. So any Jamaican, anybody from the Caribbean, the first thing any of the nurses would say when they came in is like, "Do you know?" And I'm like, "Shh, don't tell anybody I'm here. Don't tell anybody I'm here." So, God,
Don't let it out. Fantastic. Well, I think we can talk about star status tonight because we have a very special guest in the green room, and we're kind of working through some issues here, you guys. So hopefully it shouldn't be too choppy. But I would like to maybe give a little bit of a prompt to Mike Manley to introduce our friend tonight, Steve Rude. Hold on, let me clear this screen. How dare I? How rude of me. No pun intended. Steve Rude is our guest tonight. We're very excited to talk to the dude. Mike, you want to kind of blow the bugle a little bit, and then we'll bring him in?
Well, I think Steve is one of those guys you don't really need to blow the bugle for, because I mean he's celebrating his 45th year of Nexus. It's hard to believe. I remember reading or picking up the first issue of Nexus. And before I moved out east, at my local comic book store, the Eye of Agamotto. And I remember picking it up, and I remember seeing the Paul Gulacy cover and looking it inside and being like, wow, where did this guy come from? Right. And I've met Steve off and on over the years. I mean, he's certainly one of the artists, right? I mean, he's well respected, multi-award winning talent. Super nice guy. And, you know, really one of the people in the business I admire, because he never rested on his laurels. You know, a lot of guys get to a certain point and then they're just kind of like, yeah, I'm the shit. I can kind of coast. But Steve was never like that. I mean, I interviewed him. I was very happy to interview him in my old, now defunct magazine, Draw Magazine. And in fact, I remember the first time I met Steve. Steve may not remember this, but it was at a show, I believe, around somewhere in Trenton, New Jersey. And it might have been right after the Space Ghost comic came out. And met him there. And this has got to be mid-'80s, 84, 85, somewhere in there. And again, you know, and because of, we'll talk about this tonight, in the last week and a half, there was that Tripwire article that went out talking about how Steve and his family were experiencing some financial issues. And lo and behold, fandom rallied right away. And again, we'll talk about this tonight. That is something that, unless there was the internet, couldn't happen 20, 30 years ago, you know? And so I shared the link myself, and so I just think that that's a great way to see how people who really love and support an artist can really show that by helping somebody out when they're in trouble. So why don't we bring Steve in and let's get this ship going.
That's right.
5 over 5, as Space Ghost would say.
That's right. We're in the pipe 5 by 5. Thank God for the internet. Thank the maker. So, all right, let's see what I can do. I think we might have a couple of technical difficulties, but we'll figure it out. Welcome to Pencil, Steve Rude. I hope. Hey, well, okay, we're halfway there. Maybe Steve has like one of those like covers over his screen. Yeah, there you go. There you go. I like that. Nice reveal. Hey, Steve, how are you? We can't hear you.
Oh, you're muted.
All right, we're close. We'll let them work it out, and then we'll do a soft shoe. No, not yet. We're close. Don't worry about it. So just keep working on it and say some stuff, and we'll figure it out. You know, this was interesting, Mike. There's a couple of people in the chat said, like a couple of like almost like remembrances. I met Steve at so-and-so at the Tasty Freeze. I love that. Oh, I think I heard something.
Oh,
there you go.
All right, good.
Nice. Hello, Steve. Welcome to Pencil. Thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah, cool. You're welcome.
So we had a really interesting, brisk conversation started in the green room. Mike, you just want to jump right into that, and we'll get started. I'll look into the chat.
Okay. So one of the reasons two reasons I wanted to have you on right away was because like I was saying, how the internet really rallied to help you guys out, which I think is something really great. And as we were talking right before we went live, that's not something that could have helped, wasn't available to any of our heroes really back in the day, where you could say, wow, I'm, somebody bounced a check on me, or my publisher went bankrupt. There was no, hey, fans rallying around somebody like that. So I just thought that was really, there's a lot of negative things about the internet, but I think that's a really positive thing about the internet. Did you hear that, Steve?
Oh, he disappeared again. Oh no!
Nope, now we can't hear you again.
All right, you guys will keep working on it. That's weird. So while they're working that out, Tristan, what up, Tristan? Who's had a lot of really great things to say in the chat. I agree. The ability to lift up other artists is an absolute higher calling. Yes, I agree with that. I think we're in a really great space for people having, we'll call it a network for lack of a better word, to be able to say, hey, things aren't great right now, and your community can come to your aid. I think that's great.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right.
Don't expect it to work for long. It'll go out again real soon.
Okay.
So we were just saying how it was great that the internet rallied around you guys and really helped you guys out.
It's really something.
And
this phenomenon that we have now, all these things we have access to. I'm not a big fan of machines in general, but obviously everything is, to me, I kind of look at it as one step forward, two steps back with technology. But when it works, it's great.
yeah, well, it seemed like people, within 24 hours, people were really responding.
They were. And I'm so used to having, see, I don't get paid for anything that I do now. Whatever we fundraise, it goes to publishing whatever we're trying to advertise about. But I haven't had a real paycheck since I worked for DC, and that was several years ago.
Yeah, you were talking about that on one of your live streams, which I try to check out if I can. I think that's the other thing, that I think a lot of fans don't really have an idea of like what the ecosystem is for you as an artist today, because it's very different today than it was, again, even 15 or 20 years ago.
Well, thanks to having a lot of books about the people that I admire the most, the portrait painters, like Mike knows all about these guys, the Zorns, the Soroyas, and the Sargents. It's what's interesting is if you read some of the passages in these books, they too had problems with models showing up, as in they didn't show up. And I kind of laughed at that, because I did have models showing up for a good 10 years, and then it just dried up. And why these things happen, why they work in these kind of phases, I wish somebody would explain that to me, because I don't get it.
So do you think it was the ebb and flow of the young college age gals who would be models?
I wish somebody, like I said, I wish somebody would explain it to me, because I used to work at in restaurants, making pizzas and all that stuff, and we always had these time periods where everyone would come in, and then it would be slow, and then it would pick up again at 9 o'clock, and then it would be slow. So I understand how it works in restaurants, but I don't understand how it works with models.
Now, I know that there are, I don't know if they have a version of it in. I imagine in Arizona they must have one, but I know for a while when I had a painting group, a local painting group, we used one of these model search places that you could go on and you could say, I'm looking for a female, I'm looking for a male, and you could see pictures of them, and you could say what I'm looking for, how many hours, and we found a couple models through that, and I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, but it was like a Craigslist kind of a thing.
Model Mayhem.
That was it, Model Mayhem. So we went through Model Mayhem, and we were able to find a couple models. Sometimes you'd see somebody that was okay, they look okay, but as you know, it's different seeing somebody who looks good and actually somebody who can like hold a pose. It's not, moving around or not professional. You can look good, but that doesn't mean that you're professional.
Well, in fact, if I can get a word in here, I went through Model Mayhem myself, and that's when I had the best luck of finding models, but that was at least 10 years ago. And going to that site now, you come up empty. If you're lucky if you even get a call back from these people. So that kind of falls under the category of responsibility. And you know what we hear about the young kids today about responsibility, as in it doesn't exist. I don't get it. We're offering them work. We're going to pay them all that stuff.
Maybe you say free Wi-Fi and iPhone. They'll come right over.
But that's such a big deal, isn't it, guys? I mean, anyone who's an artist knows, gets it drilled into them pretty much for the duration of their career about life painting, going to the source, and learning from nature and all that kind of stuff. It really is. I think the reason people harp on it so much is because of the you can't get three dimensions without seeing a real person in front of you.
Yeah.
Or being in the environment where you're painting a tree or a waterfall or something like that. It's a lot different than this, a flat photograph.
True. And the other thing is when you're looking at not only a photograph, but you're looking at, your favorite illustrators, what you're seeing is their interpretation of the real thing, not your interpretation of the real thing. So you can study a hand, you can study anatomy, but it's completely different to see the wide variety of the human body in front of you and then having to interpret it, not relying necessarily upon somebody else's determinations, right? Like if you take a photograph, you're completely limited to that perspective, that you can't do that. You can't look around. You can't say, turn your head a little bit. If the photographer is good, even the best photographer, you're still limited to that person's vision.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I remember a couple of months back, I was so desperate to work from life again, but couldn't find the models. I just started looking up photos and doing quick sketches from that source, and it paid off. It was a lot of fun, especially because I didn't put a time limit on myself. I didn't hear that stupid clock going off every second. But there's always a way to figure it out if you're resourceful enough.
Are you near? No, you guys are in Arizona. Are you near any colleges?
Well, the Scottsdale Art School is something I went to for probably 6 or 7 years. They had open studio on the weekends, and those were just fantastic. Except when people got snobby. That's where all the rich people supposedly live, and they're very protective of their turf. And once I started to get this kind of blowback, I left, and I haven't been back since. I do not like the school or the people that go there.
but you might be able to talk to their model coordinator and get some names.
Yeah, I actually tried that, and it didn't prove the solution that I thought it would.
Mhm. Steve, have you had any luck with those? And this was pretty popular for a minute, and I don't hear about it as much anymore. There used to be kind of like model websites where you could see like a model in 365 degrees, and or maybe like pose sets. Like here's April, and there's like 400 pictures of and different things. And it's still not, in front of you, but I don't know how you feel about those type of things.
Well, Monday's on the phone to Tuesday, right? Yeah. April. I probably went through a few dozen Aprils in my time. I have seen that stuff, and I applaud anyone who's trying to make an effort to circumvent the model situation by coming on TV, as I still call it, the web or whatever,
Yeah.
and see these 360 things rotating in front of our eyes. They're making the best of a compromised situation, and I applaud anyone who is out there trying to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, it was always, even when I was in school, it was always hard to find. We always ended up having, like, if there was 7 models at the beginning of the semester, you were down to the same 2 or 3 people by the end of the. I mean, Jamar was a model coordinator at one of the local schools, and that's always the way it was, because a lot of people are just flakes. They're just like you were saying, they're just simply flakes.
Yeah. It was really hard to keep good models, and if there are good models, everybody's fighting for the good model, and she's always booked. So.
I honestly, guys, I truly do not understand the world as it is today. I mean, when we were in our, graduating from high school, the idea of not showing up for work was, it never happened.
Right.
Never. You showed up to work because that was your job, and you stayed the full 8 hours to do your thing. And I don't know. There's been shifts going on in the wave of humanity and how they think and how they act. But I always thank God I was born when I was. I wouldn't trade my birth date for anything.
Really, if I traded my birthday, I would push it back. I would have pushed
Really,
it.
is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would have pushed it back, so I could have gotten into comics in either the 40s or the early 60s.
Yeah. Well, having been born in '56, the memories of the spinner racks and the magazine display cases. That's what I grew up with, and there was the thrill of seeing these images drawn by these artists that I didn't know who they were for the longest time, but it grabs you right away. The excitement of figures that are drawn in heroic proportions, and people that never experienced that because of the time they were born. It's a different world, guys.
Well, the other thing was, the further back you go, comic books was the only thing like comic books. There weren't video games, right? There weren't movies. The movies that had superheroes, kind of sucked. You got your fix maybe with with your Batman TV show or your your Irwin Allen shows or whatever when you're 5 or 6 years old. But when you go back, we were talking a little bit in the green room about looking at something like Prince Valiant, where you had somebody like Hal Foster who spent 80 hours a week to work on one page,
entire strip. Yeah.
Nobody does that now. Nobody does that.
Another advantage I had besides my birth date is I was the first of the Rudes, so I got all the attention, and I have such vivid memories of my dad taking me to the theaters. These old vaudeville converted things that were turned into theaters, and the momentous events of looking at this huge screen, which have changed obviously to smaller ones. But the movies I saw are so ingrained in my head. They're as much a part of me as my right in my drawing arm. They're just that made my life, and it formed everything that I was to be. You seeing stuff like that.
Do you find it incredibly different now? Even just like, do you enjoy kind of television these days, or what's going on in the movies these days, or do you feel like it kind of just stopped being good at a certain point in the timeline?
No, well, as a matter of fact, Jamar, I just saw what was it? The Jack Ryan thing with the Star Trek guy. You know the movie I'm talking about?
Yeah, the guy who plays Kirk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just saw that last night, and it was utterly stupendous. So the idea that
Chris Pine, thank you.
There is an era that produces good stuff where other places don't is I'm happy to say not true. I mean, anyone. What I find interesting is when we do our comics, we're getting paid whatever we're getting paid, and then we can see a movie where the screenwriter gets a couple $1 billion, right? It is terrible, and so there's no category that confines itself to quality. Quality is entirely based on the person producing the work. And some of it is really bad, and they get paid a lot for it, and some of it is just tremendous. The things that are tremendous, I get such a thrill out of seeing those things. I so admire quality, and there could be 5 terrible movies that came out from the same director or whatever, but like that Jack Ryan movie was just out of this world. It was so incredible.
Yeah, that just made me think of. I saw a trailer for this on my Roku, and I didn't get a chance to watch it. I think it was like, what was it, like Teenage Assassins or something? It was like I think it was like Korean or something. It looked amazing. I've never heard of it. It made me want to watch it, but it's just things come out of left field sometime, and there's still great things happening.
Yeah, well, left field is a good place to be looking for this kind of stuff because you're not expecting it, and like I said, it comes out of an area that is uncommon to see it coming out of. But I love the idea that us being artists and writers, that we're in the hot seat every time we type up a line for the characters to say. And I love the idea that I'm competing against guys that are on occasion terrible writers. But the really good ones, I being a person of some substance, there's a couple things you need to do a really good story. The first one is there has to be one person in the movie or the show or whatever that is down to earth. That's the guy you identify with. If you go off that track and you can no longer identify with what the writer's talking about, it's gone. You're out. So you have to have that one person that you see as normal, how they react in a normal way. And then it's like Green Acres, right? You can have all the crazy stuff in the world, but you need Eddie Arnold to be
right.
What's the word I'm looking for? I'm always looking for the right word. Let's just call it the person that is not crazy.
kind of like the straight man almost.
Yeah.
To that,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
There's something very surreal about that show that I recall pretty well.
Wow. That's
Well,
good.
all those shows were like that. Even like the Beverly Hillbillies. If everybody is weird, then nobody is weird because the whole thing becomes surrealistic. You know.
When you guys are all writers, I'm going to guess, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about what I just said? What's if you had to spell out your process in just a sentence or two? What would you say the secret is for all the guys that want to know what those secrets are? You can go ahead, Jamar.
Yeah.
No pressure, Steve Rude. You know, I want to say something probably really cliche, like service to the story, you know, or like where's the story, as far as it's concerned with me, you know. Like,
so how do you think up your stories? How do you think them up?
I kind of start my process with a what if, and if I'm dealing with characters that I've been working with for a long time, I want to put them into some sort of scenario that they have to figure their way out of. So it could be as easy as, what if X happens with Y? How does he get to Z? And then I just start basically forming a ball around that until the story comes out.
Sounds good. Steve, what do you have to say about your writing? How do you do it?
For the most part, I'm fine. In terms of like a process, I'm starting with an ending. I know where I want it to end, and if I can find to me, a ending that means something to me, and that I can then somehow cloak on my way to get there, then that's the kind of thing I like to do. I like to have a character who is, you know, a stand-in for me, who is basically a doofus, and and then let the world besiege him on his way to wherever he needs to go. Almost always that ends up being the formula for what I'm doing. Even if it's a more heroic story, then the character's a little more opaque with their interests and how they get to how the story gets to where they go. But you know, if my stories are all start with the ending, and I work backwards and just try to make characters who feel their way through a story, and usually the villains are the ones who don't who feel differently or feel less.
Well, have you noticed that there are times when you're writing something and it kind of comes out of the ether, and it's fairly brilliant in your mind, and we don't know where that comes from, do we?
No, it's
that creative factor is just kind of a total enigma when you think about it. Where do these things come from? Mike, you write, so how do you go about doing this kind of stuff?
Well, I think it depends upon the type of story and the framework. When I would teach storyboarding, I would start out by giving people little short storytelling assignments, and I'd always tell them, you know, think of a nursery rhyme like Jack and Jill, or Little Miss Muffet, or something like that. You have the beginning, then which sets up your characters, then you have a conflict, then you have a resolution, right? And so if you structure it, if you have the structure, then it's a matter of playing around with the resolving the conflict, right? And then you try to be, is it a fanciful, magical situation? Is it a scary horror situation? Is it a, you know, I would start actually with something really simple, like waking up and going to school, and then waking up and feeding your pet.
And that's how you would start it off, and then it would blossom from there.
Right. Yeah. To give them the idea of how to structure your story, right? And I would try to make it open, so like some people don't have a pet. Okay. So you can make up a pet. Like you could say, well, I don't have a dog, but I have a dragon. The whole point was to be creative. And I always say that it's like a magic spell. We all know that thing when you're watching a movie or you're reading a comic, and it violates some sense of logic. And then you go, well, that was really bad, or that was really unclear, or that was really stupid. And the spell is broken. And if you do that, you almost never can get the person back in to the spell.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty ruthless about the people that I listen to. If they get off track, and usually it stays like that, and I don't want to get back on track because they blew it. You don't. You try not to blow it at any point at all in the story, and I honestly don't think it's that hard. I love the idea of retrofitting all these new ideas into the main story. Like, I love the idea of taking all these peripheral characters, like guards or red shirt guys in Star Trek, and giving them a life before we kill them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're as much a part of the story as anybody is. They've all got their totally separate lives. Everything that's, I mean, you could write a story about one red shirt guy from Star Trek, and it would be a fascinating plunge into your imagination and how good you can, how versatile you are with thinking up something that anybody can read and get have a good time with. I love that idea.
Yeah, that was part of my assignments. Like, one was like to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Draw a comic that showed step by step how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it was amazing how many things were left out.
Oh, is that right?
Like, oh, here's the jar of peanut butter and jelly. Here's the bread sandwich. Well, how did you put what went on first? Did the peanut butter go on first? Did the jelly go on first? Did you have to bang the peanut butter on the counter to loosen the lid? I would say, you're leaving all these things out, just like the one with people going to school or people feeding their pet. Do you just grab the can like Popeye and squeeze it and the food squirts out into the dish? Or do you get a can opener? Like, all those little things are important. It's better to have them, and then later, maybe depending upon time, you can edit that stuff out. But it's really being able to think through the whole thing, like you're saying. And it's amazing how once you point that out, they go like, oh, yeah, right, yeah, I have to use a can opener, or I had to run it under the faucet, under the hot water until the lid got expanded by the heat. That's where creativity comes from, because you could take that same thing and apply it to a laser gun having to heat something, or Nexus firing his energy beam, right? That's I think when you ask the question, you get an answer, which leads to another question, which leads to another answer, right? And if you're open, then it's better to let a lot of stuff in. Then you can edit it down, right? It's when you don't open yourself and you don't really follow through, that means you're not really placing yourself in that situation. That's why I always say, when you look at somebody like Jack Kirby, who had a very extreme style, but if you look at like his war comics, or you look at the characters in the background, they will have very real, informed gestures. Like, if you notice the way he would have those guys holding guns, he was a soldier, and he saw a lot of guys holding guns. And you can tell if a guy was in the army and saw people holding guns, or whether he only saw shit on TV and never saw anything in real life, right? So even if you have a style that can be cartoony or extreme, it can be informed by that real information,
I would say that's very good, Mike, and Steve and Jamar too. Those are good explanations. Um, the fact that we're all individuals, and I think I've always thought that life is an individual answer because we only have one person within us. That's who we are. And there's as many ways to solve a problem as there are individuals. So there's no such thing as I don't believe in the words can't, and I don't believe in no. So if you take those out of your mindset, where can't you go? Because you can go anywhere with it, with thinking like that, and that's part of the fun of being a creative person.
Steve.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
No.
I wanted to get to some questions. They're starting to stack up, Steve. You feel like answering a couple of questions?
Sure.
All right. And this is so riveting. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Our good buddy.
Oh, I have some good stuff coming up too that you haven't heard yet.
Okay. All right.
It's going to challenge all of us.
I don't know if I'm ready.
It'll be fun. Believe me. A lot of fun.
All right. Jeff, our good buddy from YouTube, asks, Steve, how are you splitting up your time with all the things you do? Do you have a day for writing, a day for drawing Nexus, a day for YouTube, etc.? How do you break down your week?
Everything I do is based on impulse. And somehow I always know where to go when I need to go to it. And that kind of spells out my entire day. Like I'm writing the new Nexus story. When I'm working on some painting or something, and I feel like I need a break, I won't take a break. I'll just go over to the other side and start typing away with my script. And that's a lot of fun. I have all these books on my bookshelf here about how to write. But I want to tell you, the best advice I ever heard about writing didn't come from those books. It came from Stan Lee. He broke it down into such simple descriptions. He says, well, you think up an idea, and pretty much anyone can think up an idea, and you find ways to complicate something simple. And it's all based on what you'd want to see. And so it all comes out of you, and if something's wrong, you'll know it. If something's going right, you'll know it. If you're stuck on something for a little bit, it won't be forever. You think about it, and all these amazing creative answers come to you out of nowhere. So what Stan said is he broke it all down to something simple, something that these other books with their 500, 800 pages just couldn't do.
That's great. Thank you, Steve. What a great answer. And I'm going to follow in with another question from our good buddy Tim Fielder. What's up, Tim Fielder? Tim says, question for you, Steve. I'm always in awe of artists that paint their books. Is this something you would like to do more often, or is it not worth the bother? Also, a huge fan.
I tried doing 8 pages of full color, painted in watercolor, and it was a real trial, let me tell you. You need to gather a lot of reference to even consider starting out a book that's going to be fully painted. So I'm happy to stick to my painted illustrations and keeping my comic book work in black and white, because that's a whole thing that you can explore for the rest of your life and never tap out on it.
All right, cool. Thank you. And also, Steve, Tim says, also, you're great on social media. So gold star for you, Steve.
It's funny because, talk about people being individual entities. I know that I don't come at things the way everyone else does. And obviously it's just based on my personality. Everyone on YouTube can be so stiff and straight. They just kind of, hey, how are you people? And today we're going to talk about going to the Magic Kingdom with Mr. Rogers. Right. That's just not the way I do things. So, and another thing that's really different about me is I don't call anybody by their real names. Dogs, cats, nothing. Janelle, my wife, has at least 14 names. I never called my mom and dad. Yeah. God knows where that comes from. but he doesn't talk to me, so I still don't know. So I have a challenge for you guys if you want to go for it. I think people will find this very atypical of a standard podcast. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, somebody start off an idea,
Okay.
and then we're going to build on that. Everyone that goes next is going to build on that until we have something that we think is worthy of explanation.
All right.
And think about the things you can learn from that. People that are watching this stuff.
Right.
Three guys that write stories. How do we go about doing this? So, Jamar, you want to start this off right here?
Yeah, and
how does the story going to start?
We're going to keep it really, really kind of loosey goosey, right?
Sure. Yeah. Any way you want it. You're an individual.
Okay. A person wakes up and they're underwater.
That's great. I mean, you've already hooked people just by that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea where you would go from there?
No, that's Steve's problem.
Okay, Steve, you're next.
All
You're
right.
next. That was really good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not his car. He's woke up and it's not his car. He's in the passenger seat and he just woke up. And there is the window next to him is the driver's side window is cracked and there's water coming in at that moment. And he's not. He's clothed. That's an instruction for the artist. And the water's coming in.
Okay, I guess it's Mike's turn next.
He's clothed, but he's wearing a suit of chainmail.
That's going to be a problem for the guy. Yeah.
And while he's looking down and examining his clothes, the window keeps cracking and more water starts pouring in.
That's
Your
it.
turn. Your
Okay.
turn, Steve.
Actually, I would take what Jamar said and take just kind of embellish from there.
Okay.
So a guy wakes up and he's underwater. The first thing I have to establish is this real life or is it a dream? If it's real life, we got to explain the entire rest of the story about how he got in there, because he's not a soldier. He's not one of these soldier of fortune guys or a Navy SEAL. He's just an ordinary guy, and that's going to be the thing that is most fun to explore. How this ordinary guy that nobody cares about, they don't want it from anything. They don't want it from anything. They don't. He's not like some spy that they have to kill or something. So he's just an ordinary guy. And does he have a wife? How many friends does he have? What kind of friends does he have? Does he know how to swim? If it's not a dream, then it's real life, and we got to figure out how this guy woke up underwater like that. That is cool to me, and we could probably all of us take that, into a full story, and everyone will be different about it. That's what I like about being individuals.
Yeah, that's really.
But nice job, guys.
That's all I'm going to think about for the next week is going to be, magician's assistant tapping on the glass as he's waking up upside down in a tank of water. I'm going to have all. This is what you've done to me, Jamar.
I didn't know
that's such a big
homework.
deal. The fact that Steve mentioned things build upon what you've already established, and that's part of the fun of imagining where something can go.
I love it. Cool. Thanks.
But
Steve,
it can start small.
I like that. And I also love a good exercise. I know we talk a lot about like warm-ups, and Mike is famous for his warm-ups and wind downs. We don't talk a lot about kind of like maybe writing. We'll say it in that sense, like challenging yourself, and it's like with writing prompts as well.
So Mike was a teacher. So how long did you teach for?
I taught for about 25 years.
Okay, you got a lot of stories to tell, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever find? How many students did you teach that you kind of knew from the beginning they were going to go far in life?
I would say there was probably, out of the hundreds, there was probably a dozen, and out of that dozen, probably 5 that you knew right away. I became more experienced with that the longer I taught, because I would have the first class and you ask students, what are you into? What do you like? Well, it's in general. And then I could sort of tell, it was sort of a personality test. And I could tell from the personality tests, the people that had as we, a couple of weeks ago, had our episode where we talked about, do you have the personality to be successful? A lot of people don't. They have talent, but they don't have the personality that will allow them to focus in the way that you need to in order to be able to do this for a living, because it's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of people that love comics and love illustration and they love animation and they love all kinds of art, but they have the personality of a hobbyist, which is they can work to the point that it becomes uncomfortable, then they're kind of done.
It's funny because I never found any aspect of becoming an artist something I didn't want to learn or do. It was always exciting for me and continues to be.
Yeah. Well, I think you're even within the pantheon of people who do it, you're rare because you draw because you enjoy it, right? You enjoy it. If you enjoy the process, you enjoy the discovery, you enjoy the frustration.
Yeah, that's really that's a very novel point. Yes.
Right. There's a lot of people who only enjoy the other part. They do not enjoy the frustration. And so they say no a lot. Nah, like I would have a student, if I would give them a critique, and whenever I gave a critique, I put a piece of paper over it and I would draw over it. So I would explain it and then they could see it. Because drawing, you got to see. You can't just say stuff, because that's too imprecise. If the student was the kind of student that would go back and immediately apply that,
yeah, you got something good there.
Right. If they well, next time, I knew that was probably an 85% chance that person was not going to be able to become a professional.
Well, you know how I rate people as far as if they're going to make it or not? If they're doing something they don't have to be told to do, they're probably going to make it.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. You would see the kid that would be in the back of the class who would have a sketchbook that would be full of drawings. Yeah. And a lot of them could be crappy. But the fact that they would fill a whole book, and not just like the same little anime head over and over and over and over again, they would be exploring and trying different things. That person stood the greatest chance. That was very rare, because usually you'd have people that have sketchbooks, but they would, they'd immediately go to the middle of the sketchbook and draw like a girl's head or something. A lot of that, just drawing like a girl's head, right? They wouldn't draw the environment. They wouldn't draw anything else. They wouldn't explore. There was not a lot of exploration. So when I would see a student like that, which was usually not the student who was the most excited student in the class, often the person who was the most excited was not the person who ended up doing very well.
That's right.
It's absolutely, it's a compulsion that you,
Yeah.
that's how I describe it. There's a story I like to cite about one of the Rude brothers, the youngest. I called him Bucky, not his real name. And I came home one day from Madison, living on the campus, and I looked over, I was talking to my mom, and I looked over at the wall, and there was this beautiful scratch board drawing of kitty cats. And I looked at it and said, geez, Mom, I don't call her Mom, but Bucky's so good at this. Why isn't he doing this? And she said, I was in my mid-20s at this time, and when she gave me the answer, it floored me because I had no concept of this could be an alternative way of thinking. She goes, Jim doesn't have your drive, Steve. And I had to think about that for a second. And so what came so natural to me is like pulling teeth for other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 I mean, like I said, I always felt that, you know, I've seen your sketchbooks and things, you know, you enjoy the process. And it's always weird to me. And I've interviewed a lot of artists. It's always weird to me when I interview an artist and I ask them, oh, do you draw? Do you sketch? Do you paint? And they go, no. Like the only work they do is actually the work they do for the thing they're doing.
You mean like getting paid, you mean?
Yeah, you know, right. Yeah. You know, like they don't pay themselves, or they don't husband their talent or their ability. If they're drawing, now maybe they drew when they were younger, but like once they become a professional, all their work is for the job. And then when they're not doing the job, they're not drawing. They're not filling a sketchbook. They're not painting a landscape. They're not doing anything. They're not doing even their own stuff. What they're doing is totally aimed at the job, you know?
Well, did you know I never once thought of myself in traditional terms like I'm a professional? Those don't compute to me. I don't, you know, my dad had a job. He got his work shoes on and his nice coat and tie and everything dressed up. He had a job. I've never once thought about this as a job. Not once.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing that there's no parameters that contain the way I think about this stuff. And yet normal people wouldn't think anything like that. They would say, oh, I'm a professional artist. I'm a professional writer. Never once crossed my mind. What about you guys?
We've talked about this, about the how we self-identify. If someone says, you know, what do you do? I think often it's a case of navigating their expectations for me. Like, okay, what will they can I explain what I do to that in any way? Web comics, like they wouldn't understand what that means. So usually I get away with Illustrator, but internally, I at some point I thought it was a drawing I did. I thought I'm a cartoonist. Once I did that drawing in my own head, I went from being, because to me, cartoonists was basically you, Steve, Jack Kirby, Wally Wood, the people who were my North Stars. Like, okay, that's the pantheon. And then I'm not on even the trek to Olympus yet. I'm still meandering around the base. But at some point I did a drawing and I was like, oh, in my head, it was a graduation moment for me when I'm a cartoonist. But in terms of professional and unprofessional, I think that never has mattered.
Some people make such a big deal out of that. As far as teaching goes, you know, me being me, I have an idea how I would teach people, and it's nothing like normal people would teach something. The thing I would never do is start them with the sphere and the cone and all that stuff.
Mm.
They don't care about that crap. What they care about is you know, doing exciting figures that they see in comic books. So I would say start there. Have all the fun you want, but when you get in trouble, I'm going to tell you about the cone and the sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See how far they get until they fall. And then
they will definitely fall. But they'll be interested in hearing the answer for once, instead of being told something that bores the hell out of them the first day of class.
I like that. You may wind up being their favorite professor teaching like that.
Well, these live streams are kind of my outlet for telling people things that I think the phrase goes where no one else is going to what no one else is going to tell you. But they do bring that up about my live streams, and apparently there's some kind of idiosyncratic thing about the way I do things, like calling dogs blowhards and things like that. That maybe it actually computes to a certain certain percentage of people out there that, like me, don't think in normal terms. And I want to know, when I hear that, I want to know what their normal terms are to them, because they're dependent on everything that goes forward in their life from there, depending on how they think about things or don't think about things. They just do it. They're too busy doing.
Yeah.
I love the Bruce Lee quote where he would walk into any dojo anywhere in the world and said, he would say, some guy would be bragging about his style and how he could do it better than anyone else. And Bruce Lee would say what I would say, which is, show me. That kind of ends the arguments very fast there. And I just love that way of thinking. Like if I said, Mike, draw me a bird right now. You'd either have something in your memory that you would be able to draw a certain kind of bird, or you wouldn't have enough of a memory of even not having drawn them enough, or whatever. But I think about that. Somebody did that to me once. It was Maggie Thompson. She walks up to a bunch, like 10 different artists, and say, "Draw me a bird." And I used to love drawing animals. I wanted to be like Marlon Perkins from Wild Kingdom. At least you guys get that one, right?
Yeah.
And I used to write letters to Marlon Perkins. I would send him drawings of ocelots and things like that, and I would get a letter back.
Wow.
How exceptional a person is that they would see those little things are not little things. They're big things. They're really big things.
Totally agree.
And every one of you guys can recite something that could have been a really small thing, but it wasn't. It was a huge thing. And it could be just a word or a sentence, and that's enough to launch you into the stratosphere of creativity.
I love it.
Yeah. It's funny you're mentioning that, because I taught two different kinds of classes. I taught college classes, and then I taught a high school class. And so the high school class, which I taught for like 10 years, was open to any kid in Philadelphia. They could show up, and it was an illustration class. So, which is different because, your illustration can kind of be anything, right? It was different than the still life class where you had the still life and you look at the still life and you. So I realized that, a lot of kids would come in, they're interested, but they're also they very easily become paralyzed, right? So one of the things I would do is I would do these little demos in the beginning to show them just the whole idea thing. Like, I don't have an idea. A lot of people that's it. They just derailed right away because they don't have an idea. So I would do these things where I do get people in the class to just shut out words. We write all the words down, and then I take a handful of the words and I would make an illustration, show them how you can take this stuff and just kind of freeform it, and make an illustration, and there's things you can do to help yourself, pay attention to where the horizon is something high, something low, little things like that. And that sort of freed them because it's all, anything you don't like, you can just erase. But I also taught a workshop for little kids. And
that should be interesting. How do they react compared to being paralyzed like high school students would or college students?
So what I did is I taught this comic class, and I had these big rolls of paper, and I just rolled them out on the wall. And I went and I drew one panel. And then every kid could come up and draw a panel after that. They were the most creative because they were
and
like, oh,
uninhibited.
yeah, yeah. And
No fetters in their brain. No.
yeah,
Nothing.
it was a lot wrong. And then every once in a while, when it kind of slowed down, I would go and draw another panel, and then that would get people to go. It was really, really, there's that thing where you go from, you're like 9, 10, 11, where you're creative to where you become critical. You become critical. You go, my horse doesn't look like the horse that I want the horse to look like. And that's when most people stop drawing, because you become critical and it's no longer fun. Right before that, they would draw the most fucked up horse you ever saw, but it was fun. The creativity came out. It's that weird point at where you're creative, but you become critical. That's where the four of us kept going, because we went through that, but we kept going. Most people. That's why if you went and got a 55-year-old truck driver and you gave him a sheet of paper and asked him to draw something, he would draw it probably pretty much at the same level that he did when he stopped drawing as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, he would draw the weird, bizarre, sort of disproportionate people with a big, giant, round circle for the head and all that stuff.
With like tree hands.
Right? Yeah. But it was really interesting to see little kids super creative, and then they would all get sort of jazzed when somebody else would draw. Then they would want to go right up and they would want to draw. College kids would not necessarily want to do that, because there'd be more peer pressure to go up and draw next.
Yeah, that's a huge reveal there, Mike. Was there a moment in any of your guys' lives on the path to becoming an artist that some person maybe made a huge difference, that if you had not met them, it would never be quite the same?
I think so. I can say in my instance, and this might sound cheesy, but it was my mother, because my mother was, for lack of a better term, a commercial artist back when. Okay. I guess you would call it graphic design now, but she was a struggling student, single mom, commercial artist. And every apartment we lived in, she had some space that had a drafting table in it, and had all of the trappings of what a professional artist does and uses in the way that someone like that conducts themselves. And I think I had a leg up even when I applied to art school in high school here in Philly, because I had a little bit of a cheat code, because my mother was like, no, you need a presentation case. You slide it into this plastic sleeve and your work needs to be clean. Just something that simple. Is when I go to my audition, there's kids that are pulling stuff out of a backpack and like, unfurling it on a table, and they're like, oh honey, no, that's not how we do art here. You have to be like, so those little kind of leg ups, I think, really helped me kind of approach it as something that people do for real. So that I would say my mom.
So I would I'm going to ask Steve this right here. Given that our paths are very similar, but at the same time vastly different, was there something along your path that really gave you something that you couldn't have had without having met that person?
I think
what keeps you going? What keeps you going?
Because there was a ton of people. I think if you pull them out of my path of where I'm from, where I am right now, that I would be in such a different place. Too many to, but like a primary, what keeps me going, is getting out of bed in the morning, or you mean in terms of comics? Because I mean, in terms of comics, to me, it's finishing this story that I've been working on. It celebrates its 10th year this year, so a baby compared to the projects you guys are working on. But it is this finishing this project and putting a button on it is what keeps me going. That's really, I mean, it's not, and it's the desire to do it. It's not the desire to have done it. It's the desire to do it. The fun of figuring out how to lift these impossible things I put in front of myself. And that's really the thing, is to try to figure out a way to make people laugh in a way that they didn't think they could laugh about a particular thing, or show it to them in a different way that they didn't think. So I guess, yeah, I don't know if that's close to answering the question you're asking.
You're answering it in your own special way. What was I going to say here? Some people don't even need to be asked what keeps you going. They just keep going. And to take time and think about it, kind of doesn't compute for some people. But Mike, you were in charge of that Draw magazine for a long time, and that's a lot of effort. But you must have a lot of really cool stories about having to deal with being an editor and getting these people to produce their columns every month, like Jamar's column and Ordway's and all that kind of stuff. Did you find that particularly hard to rally these people and get the work out of them?
No. Actually, and I think that's because I picked people that I knew could talk about their process, right? And I mean, I knew that because I know Jamar really well. We're really good friends. So, and I know Jerry very well. We've worked together. So I knew that he was the kind of person, just from seeing his process, he could also talk about his process, because there's artists that you meet that are fantastic artists, but they can't really tell you how they did it. They can't really sit down and go like, well, I know I make chocolate chip cookies. I can't really tell you how, and you know who was like that?
Yeah.
Was Williamson. I learned from Al through observation and study, because Al was not like my other friend, Ricardo Villagran, who could actually specifically tell you this, not this, not this, So I would ask Al something like, how do you do blonde hair? He couldn't, that's tough, sport. That's tough, right? Now, if I watched him ink blonde hair, or I watched him draw something, I could learn it. But he was a feeling guy, right? He had great skills, but he was not a guy who, probably like a guy like Wally Wood, could tell you very specifically how to do something. But Al was not, he was not an artist like that. And I think that's what I call drawing by instrument. Right.
Did you work with Al when he had the loft, the barn?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved being up there.
Yeah. Yeah. The carriage house. That was fantastic. Yeah.
When he moved, it was completely different. But up in that loft, that was one of the most comfortable, fun places to be that I could recite to you right now. He would just be working, and someone next to him, because he liked to have his friends hanging around and helping him out. That was Al's thing. But I can't imagine his life wasn't a lot of fun most of the time.
That's true. I think for him, in that generation of guys, it was fun. And that's how they sort of palled around. Frazetta and Wood and Angelo Torres and the Flegel gang, as they used to call themselves. For them, it was fun. You sit down, you bang on a 5-page story, you make enough money to pay your rent and date girls. I think that was a big part of how he lived and how he worked. That was his personality. I've known other artists that are very different, and I think actually, and one of the hard things for him, I think, in a way, was when he started inking at Marvel, and first started inking at DC, and then he started inking at Marvel, he was making a lot of money. He was making more money inking than he ever made drawing Star Wars or Corrigan or whatever. And those strips are very hard. I know, because I do too. And it's a lot of hard work. And
well, when he moved, Mike, to that kind of a ranch house kind of a thing, I remember his drawing setup, and he had he had two areas of ink. One was the brush ink, and one was the pen ink, right? And I remember, being so enthused, I just kind of went over and started playing with it. He says, "No, you don't do that right there. Leave that alone," that kind of stuff. But he was, he's quite a character, wasn't he?
yeah.
Did you guys ever meet Al Williamson before? Yeah.
No, didn't have a chance. No, it's all Mike. Like I live vicariously through Mike's stories.
Well, that's one of the great things that we will always have under our belt and in our hearts is the fact that we met every practitioner going back to the 1940s. We met those guys, didn't we? And to have that, to be able to say that is, it makes me feel thrilled that I was born when I did, because I met everyone.
I love it. So this will be a great time, Steve. And how you doing? I'm just checking in on you. How you feeling? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. See, the time just flows by with us. We're going to morph into my favorite part of the show, and then we have some business to attend to before you get out of here. I didn't forget. I am looking for. This is a lightning round, my dear friend. So what's going to happen is Steve Conley has a battery of questions and statements from the chat, and he's going to fire them off to you. Please give him some answers. Keep them brief, and then we'll keep it moving. Thanks, Steve.
Oh, that's no problem. I'll keep them brief.
All right.
We first have over on YouTube, Bill O'Donnell has a question. What was your opinion of the documentary they did on you?
The filmmaker started out as a friend, and by the time the film was done, he completely cut me out of the editing process, and a lot of the things that I thought were going to be part of the making of this thing, I was completely removed from. He actually asked everyone but me to give him feedback at some point. And if I had been able to go in there with the editing, I would have put a lot more of my sense of humor in there. But that was all taken out. That was never in there.
Thank you for the question, Bill. Tristan over on YouTube says, speaking of the process of craft, I love the Nexus Preview Edition Part 1. It has not left my drafting table since I opened it up for study. Not so much a question, but a lot of praise in the chat for your work. But Tristan really liked the Nexus Preview Edition Part 1.
So that has to be another one of my idiosyncratic qualities that people pick up on. Because as you could probably guess and sense by now, normal is not in my in my back pocket. It's just not one of my things. I have to do it my way, or really, how does that song go? Or no way at all.
That's right.
Thanks, Tristan. Bill O'Donnell with another follow-up from YouTube. You've mastered a ton of different media types of art. Which has been the most challenging or rewarding media once you got into it? Is there
honestly, if I had to pick one, I would be dishonest. I look at them all as the artist playground. Every one of them is different, and because they're so different, you can spend your entire life going through the variety of all these things that are part of the playground. I just love that. If I had to confine myself to black and white line art, I would not be happy.
Your figures are very sculptural. Have you done sculpture?
No, I really haven't. I never took the sculpture, but most of my sensibilities came from the Andrew Loomis books, because that was my idea of I call them Loomis girls and Loomis guys. These super handsome guys and these beautiful sweetheart girls before they were covered with tattoos. So, yeah, that's one of my guys that has always been with me. And I wanted to be an illustrator. To be an illustrator, to me, I would have to get at least close to my idols, to my guiding lights. And I kind of think of it in a way that I will never get there, but because they're always showing me the way, I keep trying.
That's great.
You know, it's funny, Steve. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but the first you were talking about people who were influenced you. So I would say there were 3 people or 4. You know, one we just talked about was Al, but my grandfather was a display letterer.
Ah, yeah.
Right. And he had I still have it up here. He had a copy, the original 1943 copy of Fun with a Pencil. He gave that to me when I was 10 or 11 years old. So I was into the whole Loomis thing, even though I couldn't really understand the perspective thing really at 10 or 11 years old, all the lines and all that stuff. I didn't get all that.
Oh,
you know,
yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you guys have those books.
Yeah. So I had that. That was my main book. And then my grandmother bought me Disney's Illusion of Life.
The big thick one, the giant.
Yep,
giant
she
book.
bought
Yeah.
that
over
for
there.
Christmas.
Yeah.
And then she bought me the Origin of Marvel Comics by Stan Lee. So my grandma was my biggest booster, honestly, even more than my grandpa, because my grandpa was kind of a dick. He gave me that book, but he was also kind of a dick, right? He was what I call an Indian giver, what they used to call an Indian giver. So, like, he gave me a drawing table, and then one day he came and he took it back, right?
Yeah.
But he gave me
there's
that.
a lot of dicks out there, guys.
Right,
you know.
Yeah. But he gave me that book, and I learned that book gave me that constructional foundation that put me on a path early that I think really helped me out. Because once you learn, like, oh, if you draw the little puppet guy and you can rotate those balls on his head to draw from the different angle, that clicked with me right away. I totally got that constructive way of building a figure that I think was really sort of my foundation.
If I would let me see how I'm going to word this here. The thing that gives people hope out there, one of the things we get all the time is am I too old to start? And in fact, there's no such thing really. Some of the greatest artists I know started in their late 20s, 30s, and are some of my greatest guiding lights. So it doesn't matter. The only thing that's important is not waiting longer than the time you have now. If you're gonna say, okay, I want to do it because I don't feel like age is going to be a condition for me. Just make sure you don't wait another year before you act on that condition, because that's really going to hurt you. That's what kills people is not taking action when it needs to be taken.
All right, let's get back to these questions.
Yeah.
Back to the question.
Not waiting longer than the time we have now. That's beautiful. Deckard on Deckard 2019 on YouTube. During the initial run of Nexus, many great artists contributed to the series. Was there any consideration of collaborating on Nexus with perhaps Kirby, Toth, Dave Stevens, or Alex Ross?
Ross came along. He's 10 years younger than myself. He was kind of a prodigy. His mom went to the Academy of Art in Chicago, and Alex went there, and Loomis taught there, and Sunblue graduated from there, and the greatest teachers on earth came out of that place. But as far as collaboration, no, I never had a sense of wanting to do that. I wanted everything to be done the best that I could do it. So it was always a personal challenge to see how good I could make something, no matter what the challenge was.
Oh, that's great.
Although you did have Garcia Lopez do an issue, right? He did an issue.
A lot of guys did issues of Nexus. Yeah, they were all. It was very interesting. That was when I was doing World's Finest for DC. So I had to take that time off, and they wanted to keep the book going. I remember Rick Obadiah, the publisher. He didn't talk a whole lot, but when he did, he would occasionally let things slip. And one of the things he said was, "When Root's not doing it, it doesn't sell." Well, it didn't sell when I was doing it either.
That's fantastic.
Thank you for that question, Deckard 2019. Another lovely comment from Joe Illage from YouTube. Mr. Rude, your World's Finest miniseries ranks among my favorite illustrated Superman Batman stories.
Well, that's always nice. The idea that you can, something within you can be of such benefit to someone else's life is nothing to take for granted. It's actually one of the greatest things you could ever contribute to someone else's life is to give them something that endlessly entertained them, but excited them so much that it made a huge dent in influence in their life. World's Finest. A couple things about that. I remember drawing the Christmas scene. I think it was book number 2 in July. So I had to summon up Christmas in my head. The other thing was I was extremely determined to do things the way that my illustrator teachers taught me. Even if they weren't my teachers, I learned about them through books like, Briggs and Fawcett and all those guys. They always said, go to the real thing if you want to be an illustrator. If you wanted to find out what the South was like, you would fly down to Georgia and things like that. So that's what I did. I remember going up to rooftops, like 6 stories high, downtown Pasadena, and I didn't take photos. I drew, like you're supposed to do, right? If you're a serious guy. And I just sat up there, and I was mid-30s, and I just sit there with my sketchbook and just have fun. It was so fun to do that stuff.
To see what a real rooftop looked like.
Yeah, it was fun.
We got a question here from Tim Fielder on Facebook. Hello, Tim. For Mike and Steve, how essential is it for an artist to be able to communicate in this new social media-centered age?
Well, what kind of communication are you talking about? You mean communicating as an artist? That's a no-brainer. You just be yourself and throw it out to the world and see where it sticks. But Mike, what's your entrance to that? You understand it better than I do?
Well, I think it's part of, if you have an outgoing personality and you like talking and you like sharing, then it's just it's like this, right? This is social media, right? When the sales of the magazine declined to the point that I couldn't really continue to ask John to continue to publish it, I decided that, well, maybe we should do a podcast, because it seemed like what was happening is people are still interested in learning, still interested in talking, still want to see the information. They just don't want to read. Like, the younger you are, the more you don't like. And I found that another thing I found out as a teacher, because one of the things I would do is I would give people stuff to read, not boring stuff, but like good stuff, like curated stuff. They didn't like to read. I would make handouts that they would leave in class. So I'm seeing the rise of streaming and everything. And I'm seeing, you've got all these people doing, like you're saying, all these videos and things on drawing and comics or whatever. But I don't believe, because I'm old-fashioned, I don't believe you learn to ink anything by watching a video of inking going. You don't learn anything that way, because that's not how I learned. I didn't learn how to make a line going this way or a line going this way by watching the video.
Well, I noticed you mentioned extroverts earlier on, for people that could talk about their craft and all that. I love the idea of finding someone that doesn't talk and finding a way to breach that barrier so that they can't stop talking.
That's great.
And what you have to do is care. I mean, you can't fake that. They have to genuinely feel like you're going to listen to them, because most people, the act of engaging and listening is not exactly an all-time high of an art form these days.
Well, I think also with social media, there's that signal to noise ratio. And I think when you have a video of you doing something, if there's silence, for some people, that means, oh, that's bad. You need to be like, oh, I'm drawing this line. I'm doing this thing. I'm doing that thing. Look what I'm doing over here. Like, you can, like I said, I learned how to hold my pen. Because I was using the 108 like Al.
Yeah, very flexible.
But I was not getting the same kind of line. And I was like, So I watched him ink one day, and I noticed I was holding the pen like this, and he was holding the pen like this. Now, that's not something he would ever say to me. That's something that I learned through observation. So there's multiple ways of learning, right? There's someone can tell you like, don't do this. Like when I was learning about painting, the teacher would say, like, if you're going to do a lead primed canvas, there were certain ways in my media and methods class I learned that if you do it this way, your painting will last forever. You do it this way, it'll fucking fall apart in 10 years and it'll start to crack. So there's certain things that someone can tell you very specifically, technical things. And then there's other things I learned. I watched Nelson Shanks paint several times. And what I learned,
or for real or online?
For real, in person.
Yeah, right. There's nothing like that.
Right. And what I learned was, because he did these portrait demos, and the guy was fantastic. A real link back to guys like Sargent, right? And his demos really had that verve. And what I learned that I would not have seen if I had watched the DVD was that at least 50% of the time he was looking.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking, and he'd look, and he'd look down at his, and he'd mix something, and he'd look, and he'd look, and then he'd, boom. Then he.
Well, that was the Sargent thing, wasn't it? For those that know about the great John Singer Sargent, he was said to have actually worn a hole in the carpet from running back and forth so often, because you couldn't paint the same way up close as you do when you step back. Stepping back is really my saving grace. I know how to finish a painting when I step back.
Yeah. Yeah, when you go out to the Brandywine, to NCY's studio, the floor in front of the easel is worn from him going back and forth.
Isn't that great? I love those kind of stories.
So I learned watching him paint that he looked, made a decision, then he, like a lot of people when they paint, they're like really rushing, and they're constantly going, and they're that's not how a great artist paints. A great artist thinks and makes a decision, and then, and one of my old teachers, the late Professor Connors, told me it was like using a ancient like a pirate's gun, like an old flintlock, because in a flintlock you had to like click, bam. Then you had to go, you had to make it, you had to roll the thing, and then bam. You don't like just get the paint and just start whipping it around or whatever like that, right? You had to take your time, and it was like load your paint, fire your brush, load your paint, fire your brush, right? So, you can learn a lot by just watching another artist do something.
Yeah, we should talk about workshops in a little bit because I went to a lot of them. God, the things I learned from that are I can't even tell you how beneficial those were to see painters that I loved doing demonstrations. But you were mentioning the 108, the Hunt 108 pen, and you would watch Al do it, and it wasn't necessarily something you picked up right away. You kind of went at it a little differently. I heard this incredible story the other day from Peter Frampton, and he said that when he would go over to another musician's house and pick up a Les Paul, it would sound just like Peter Frampton, and the other guy would sound just like fill in the blank. I found that really interesting. The same instrument, different results.
But I think you have to be open to that as part of your process, right? That's one of the things I had to really think about a lot and decided on when I went back to school, because I went back when I was 45. So I had to decide that I had to open myself up to other people's processes, because if you remain closed and you start immediately rejecting things, then there might be experiences that you're not going to learn from. It's better to learn it and then later on decide, well, that's not how I'm going to do it, but you can at least learn it, right? Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot from people like Shanks. I took several painting classes at his studio in Caminati. I learned from a couple of my teachers who did demos in the classes. You watch how they mix their palette. You watch the decisions that they made, whether you agreed with it or didn't agree with it. It was just interesting to see somebody make
sorry, Jamar and Steve, have you taken workshops from other artists?
Yeah.
Me and Mike thrived on them. Sounds like.
Not in a long time, but yeah, I mean, just learning in real time from a master is so sorely missing from a lot of artist education these days. They're missing some computer chips in their backs. Steve, I want to finish these questions. We're running out of time. Let's get these last couple questions in.
Yeah, I think we have a couple in here. Jeff over on the YouTube says, Steve, what's your favorite episode of Star Trek?
I like pretty much anything from the first season, and I'll tell you why. Because those episodes were so raw. People were finding their sea legs, and no one had ever done anything like this before. They talk about, wouldn't it be nice if we had these journeymen come in and just we could just dash it off? It wasn't like that. They were a lot of guys that started off were still very young and inexperienced, but those are the guys that try harder because they haven't formulated anything yet. And the sky's the limit. But I would say, I loved Return of the Archons. Mostly because there was a lot of phasers in there. Loved the phasers.
Great.
Did you guys know I met Captain Kirk?
No.
You met Shatner?
Yeah, that was one of my things I had to get down in life is meeting Captain Kirk. And so, I call dogs blowhards, right? Well, Captain Kirk was a huge Doberman guy. So I called him up and said, hey, I want to do a Doberman painting for you. He says, well, how much? I said, no, it's just, there's no cost involved here. I just want to do something nice for what you've done for me. Because Captain Kirk taught me leadership. So I turned out this really nice Doberman blowhard in watercolor. And I can tell he knew nothing about art because he had nothing really to say about it. I could have been a rank amateur to him. He wouldn't have known the difference. But it was kind of funny, yeah.
That's lovely. It's lovely that you did that. And the last, bringing us home, a two-parter from Scott Sava. Hey, Steve, no question, but your painted covers for Nexus were always my favorite, especially the Line Decker-inspired Saturday Evening Post homage. And he follows up.
Yeah. Do you want me to comment on that?
If you'd like to, yeah.
Well, that's one way you can see my varied influences, like that Nexus on the Camel uh, cover, and somebody, it might have been me, it might have been Alex Wald, the art editor, that thought about making the Saturday Evening Post type style in the top there. I love people that experiment like that. I can't stand people that are so rigid they would never think of going outside the lines. That's not my kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott followed up with, though I will ask how your brain processes the two styles between painted, illustrated, and the traditional inked comic work. They're so different in style and training.
Boy, I don't know if I could answer that very well. I I would see people that could paint, and I like the Loomis books, right? And all I could think of is, could I do that someday?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to try that. And the comic book stuff was with me from a very early age, where it's just an immediate impact that you get from looking at a certain artist, and they take you places that you could never haven't gone if you had not met that artist's style. The books that they drew, for me, it was Kirby. It was immediate.
Right. That's great. Scott, thank you so much for that. That brings us home. Thank you so much, Lightning Round.
We did it. Awesome. Good job. Whoa, hold on. Mike,
Bring me in on the other one.
Yeah, I think you're in there.
You gotta give me a second here, Mike. Well, all right, there you are. All
Yeah,
right.
my laptop battery died.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
Typical.
So I would be remiss, Mr. Rude, if we didn't talk about, you've got a big book project coming up. You want to talk a little bit about that, and I'll put some things on the screen.
There are a couple things that that are absolutely worth mentioning. The first is probably something Janelle would rather I talk about later, but I've been obsessed with my Nexus animated cartoon show for 40 years. And during that time, I have met every blowhard, not the one sold dogs, in the world that couldn't deliver anything they promised. And that's part of the path I was expecting to be on, because I read the making of Star Trek. I knew what I was in for. But someone came along within the last 2 months and gave me an idea that was foolproof. And it's just a matter of raising a lot of money, because I have to pay the people that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my foolproof way of going about this. No studios, no one above me. I'll be in charge of a bunch of hand-picked guys. We'll keep the crew really small, so they have to be experts in everything they do. One main head animator, one main cleanup guy, one main showrunner to help me out with things that I'm not good at. So the idea is to take all these different people who have these different aptitudes, and basically putting it all together and creating something that hasn't been seen in 70 years. And I work on this thing compulsively, and I had the time of my life without any promise of it ever being a show. I continue to work on it to this day. So that's one thing. We got to raise a lot of money for that. Probably about $2 million. There's a 2026 sketchbook coming out. The art of, they want to call it. Just all the stuff I've been doing in the last year. By the way, we didn't get a chance to really talk about sketchbooks, but there's a lot of people I see their sketchbooks and they do one drawing on the page and they flip it over and go into something else. I don't know if you guys have seen my sketchbook, but it's just not like that. Mm-hmm. They're crammed to the gills with everything I can fit in there, because I'm there to learn, not to show off.
Right.
We have, I finally put out some books that I wasn't expecting to do. One was how to draw figures. How to draw figures the Steve Rude way. Kind of a Loomis slant in the book, because I use a lot of coquille board. Mike knows all about that. Mm-hmm. But the only thing I had to make sure of that everything I did, I was proud of. because it's very easy to get talked into things you let slide because let's just get it done, Steve. Well, I don't want to just get it done, Steve. I want it has to be exactly as I intended it to be, because books are forever. They have to count the first time. Never mind the second editions or all that kind of stuff where you fix everything and all that. That's fine and dandy, but if your name's going on there and you take that really seriously, it better rate.
So now you're publishing, you're curating these things, and you and Janelle are publishing them yourself, or you how are you doing it? A Kickstarter?
They're entirely self-published, and the money that we raise goes to making the books. Real simple.
And how much are the books?
Yeah.
Can you buy? You get like a package deal?
Yeah, Janelle's in charge of all that stuff. She's just doing an insane, incredible job on that. I met her when she was 21 and she was still a young girl. But now she's in her 50s, and the changes I've seen come over here are astonishing. She can pretty much handle anything, even if she doesn't know much about it. She finds a way to find out about it through research. And it's an uncanny process to watch her forming these things out of nothing and having a good time doing that. But we have a very small staff that needs to get paid. I don't get paid. I don't care. It all goes back into the books. But having that thing going on, Mike, where people came to my aid, I can't believe how all those donations help loosen up the problems that everyone has when they don't have money. So those contributions freed me up from a lot of stress, especially Janelle, because she works like 12 hours a day. I don't do more than 10. But having people do that for you, it's kind of a remarkable thing that speaks so well of the human spirit, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, again, that's why I wanted to have you on right away, because it's like it's still fresh, and I think that was like a victory for you and your family, but also your fans, to know that they could actually help an artist that they really cared about, and they could actually see it like right away. It wasn't like, oh, well, you send some money to a place and some kid in Africa maybe gets a desk for their school. You know what I mean? Maybe the dogs don't get put down, and
the blowhards.
The blowhards don't get put down, and what's her name doesn't sing her sad song.
Sarah McLachlan.
Sarah McLachlan doesn't come to your house and play your banjo and sing a sad song for you. But I thought that was that heartened this old cynic.
I don't see how it couldn't. Honestly, when the one thing you want to make sure you never do is cry wolf in a artificial kind of a way. When we say we're not making a mortgage payment for the last 3 months, it's a reality. And that so weighs in Janelle, and I want to take that off her if I can. But it's astonishing how people would rally like that. But honestly, guys, aside from the cartoon show that I've been working so long to get, working on those new Nexus books that I'm writing and drawing are my sustenance.
Ooh.
They just do everything for me.
That's great.
And I love doing them.
So you're doing like 10 hours a day, 6-7 days a week? How do you plan your days out now?
I don't. It just comes to me automatically. Everything is intuition based. A lot of girls need 6 months to plan something. They get it down in the calendar 6 months before it happens. I do it the day of, and that's just me. Everyone does it according to their personality.
So is it different working on Nexus because you're not working with Baron now? You're doing it all yourself. Is it a different experience?
Oh, it's totally different. Yeah, I panicked for a while there, and I eventually had to come down to earth long enough to realize, after trying out like at least a dozen people into writing chores, that if I don't learn to do it, it's not going to continue. So I went about it. I went about learning the art of writing methodically, and it's once I got over that main hump, it became a blast. But the hump is always there. But I welcome the hump. That's part of that's part of the reality of being a creative person.
So you still have a hump with the art?
The hump is when you come up against a wall that you don't know how to surmount, and you have to find a way to get over it. I've seen that wall almost from day one doing Nexus. The wall is always there, and somehow I always find a way to get over that damn wall.
I love it. Hey, Steve, we are almost at the end of our runway. Would you like me to play your trailer for the project?
Yeah.
A YouTube clip. All right. So, guys, give me 1 second. We'll check that out. Hopefully, I can make this work.
And that campaign launches tomorrow on BackerKit. We've been putting the URL up on the screen. It's also in chat. There is a book plate that people who pledge early will get. So pledge early, go over to BackerKit as soon as this video is over.
Exactly. I think Janelle should hire you guys because that's stuff wasn't even aware of for the most part. I'm in my own little world, and that's really what should have been talked about earlier.
Oh, we've been plugging it throughout the stream.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm so happy to see that. Thanks so much, you guys.
Yeah. Don't wait, because if you wait, then you'll like go eat a bowl of cereal, you'll watch a cartoon, and you'll forget. Go do it right now.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that.
Let's play this clip.
Well, it took a year off my life. That was long.
Yes. Yes. That was fantastic. That's a must-have. Tell Chris Lopez. Steve Root, we are going to end this show on a fantastic note. You're a fantastic guest. Steve, can you give him one more drop in the for the project.
Yep, it launches tomorrow. It says 3 p.m. East Coast time.
Yeah, listen to Steve there.
And you can see the URL there. It's also in the chat. We put in there a few times. But back it early, they said there's a $5 pre-pledge, and again, you get a book plate. That's the only way to get it. So do check it out. It's pretty awesome. And if you rewind a little bit while we were talking and showing some of the pages earlier, you can see that book plate and what it looks like. It's pretty amazing. So
yeah.
What was I going to say? I lose my train of thought so easily. The donations that come in help liberate me to do exactly what I'm meant to do for the rest of my life.
Well, we're glad if we can help you do that. We're more than happy to do that.
There's no question you have.
Yeah. Well, Steve, it was fantastic talking to you. If you ever want a ticket to come back on to the show, please let us know. We'll gladly have you back on. What a fantastic!
Well, I kept talking about how different I am. I can only guess that the other people you've interviewed they're not like me.
you know,
normal.
No artist is normal. Whatever normal is supposed to be, right? I mean, I don't.
And then there's really not normal.
Right.
Well, we're all in the fraternity together, and I think that's what makes us special. You know, we all speak the same language.
Yeah, that's a great thing to say. No one gets into comics unless they absolutely love the storytelling challenge, and it's endless. No matter what age you are, when I start a story from scratch, it's like going back to the beginning all over again.
Oh, I love it. Well, Steve, we're gonna cap it there. Thank you so much. Congrats on your project, and everybody in the chat is on their way to help follow and pledge when the time is right tomorrow. And we will do our best to get the word out. And also, please tell your constituents on your social media to come and watch this episode because it's evergreen, so they can watch the replay and get all of this great information.
I'll get right on that.
Awesome. All right. So, Steve, we're gonna wrap this up. We do a thing on our way out of here. I think you might enjoy it, guys. Thank you so much for watching us tonight on Pencil to Pencil. On behalf of my expert co-host and our guest Steve Rude tonight, we had a fantastic time. But I heard that we may be in the end game, Steve Rude. So before we go into that cold, dark night, you're going to do this with us. Make sure you wash your Kirby hands.
your Kirby hands. There you go.
Oh, that's a fantastic Kirby hand. That's so great. Guys, thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Live long and prosper. Guys, that's right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night, and we'll see you in the funny pages.
A real pleasure. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.